June means that you hardcore college football fans like us are gearing up for the season. The magazines, preseason publications are out on the newsstand. So get ready, get prepared, and of course, learn those rosters and personnel. That's one of the reasons why we deliver it right here at the Voice of College Football each and every day. And we're going to talk SEC football each and every week. And truth be known, the plan is once SEC Media Day starts that we go every day throughout the season. Here we go. And we appreciate the comments and questions and the super chat contributions as well. David Waters, very appropriate here that David would kick us off on our SEC Live show. David Waters, you can join him on Gators Breakdown, the foremost in Florida football coverage right here on YouTube and your favorite audio platform. David and I go way back. So David, good to see you. How's it going?
Good, Mark. I guess, should we call this the SEC breakdown and bring back some old memories here?
we could do that. Absolutely. David and I put together SEC breakdown with a couple buddies, Chad Niepling and Mike Laval back in the day. And it kind of launched both of us in different directions, but certainly we're close. And it's been a great partnership with David. And what's going on at Gators Breakdown, before we get started on Florida football, you may want to highlight some people that may not be aware of what's going on at Gators Breakdown because it is a first-rate venture.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for that notoriety there. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, even got a shout out from Billy Napier when he was here in Jacksonville a couple of weeks ago. So that was good to see as well. But yeah, I mean, started it right off the heels of when we kind of stopped SEC Breakdown. And I was like, well, you know what? I kind of like this podcast YouTube venture thing. So I'm going to continue it on with the Gators. And ever since 2016 is when we launched there, of course, it's just kind of blown up. And can't thank everybody out there enough for, supporting independents, like we do here. And, got to get away from the big networks because, look, they don't talk college football like you and I, Mark. We dive in deeper than they ever will. So I think that's why, we were able to take off like we have. But certainly it's been a fun venture, going back to asking Dan Mullen the recruiting question. And a lot of people will say that was the first nail in the coffin for him there. But yeah, it's been fun to cover this Gators team. As the moniker has come on Gators Breakdown, there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation. And that really, really holds true.
I'm telling you folks one more time, Gators Breakdown. It's right here on YouTube. And again, if you like to do the listening portion of it, your favorite audio platform, Apple's podcast consistently rates it as one of the top college football podcasts nationally. And yes, if to paraphrase Billy Napier from the other day, it was something to the effect that this must be a big deal because Gators Breakdown is here. So we got a news conference and we actually have Gators Breakdown here. So, hey, there's news right here and right now.
Absolutely. It was like, oh, we mean business if Gators Breakdown's here. So
there it is.
That's what we do here.
All right. Let's get revved up some Florida football talk. And let's start with recruiting. Of course, camps are in full session. We've got official visits taking place. Really, end of May into June is just crucial time for these programs, and people might really cast the spotlight on Billy Napier and his future at Florida, resting on some of this as well. So where do we stand in recruiting? Who are some of the hot targets that people are talking about?
Yeah, Mark, we should probably start with late Monday, Josiah Abdullah, 3-star wide receiver, decommitted from Florida, and kind of the mutual parting of ways here. And you could kind of tell, Florida had hosted 2 other wide receivers this past weekend, got some big names, got some legacies that are be coming on campus the next couple of weeks as well. We kind of got word over the weekend that this was probably going to happen, and it happened late on Monday. So he was he was around, the 500 overall mark for overall player in the class of 2025. So recent decommit there. So, but, Florida is going to have to rebound with that. And of course, Mark, I know you cover Ohio State pretty close, but one of the bigger targets is a Gator legacy who was on Ohio State's campus this past week was Vernell Brown III. Of course, his grandfather played for the Gators, so it's been a long legacy there for Florida. He's certainly near the top of the board for Florida, one of the best yards after the catch receivers there in the country. But also, go back to this past weekend, and Florida did some good work with Joshua Moore and Deshaun Montgomery, both on campus this past week, both 4-star receivers from the state of Florida. So it does look like Florida will turn its attention more to state of Florida prospects at the wide receiver spot. And of course, why wouldn't you when you see what the state of Florida has produced at the wide receiver spot? So of course, DJ Lagway waiting in the wings after this season. So I think that's a big selling point. That was a big selling point for these receivers, Moore and Montgomery this past weekend. But if you want to keep going down the list, Florida is going to go after some big names. Caleb Cunningham from the state of Mississippi, he's going to be visiting this weekend. I don't necessarily see that one working out for Florida in the end, but I did mention Vernell Brown III. He's going to visit June 14th, and that's a loaded weekend for Florida because Dallas Wilson's also going to be on campus. The 5-star who's committed to Oregon right now out of Tampa. There's some talk, if he does flip, it might be a Florida-Miami battle if he does decide to flip from Oregon. So there are some big names the Gators are going after as well. But, one more from IMG, Donovan Olegbode. He's kind of been he don't let a whole lot out, but maybe trending Florida just a bit. So that visit coming up in a couple of weeks will be big. But also another legacy, Mark, is C.J. Ingram. Cornelius Ingram, a former Gators tight end in the Urban Meyer era. His son, who plays quarterback at Hawthorne, is being recruited to play wide receiver for Florida. So Florida's got some big names and some legacies to help make up for that decommitment of that they just suffered on Monday.
You just mentioned Urban Meyer. Anybody else on the College Football Hall of Fame candidates list that was just released here in the last 24 hours from Gator Nation?
I know I saw it yesterday, but I was so busy with recruiting, I didn't even go back to look at it. I know Urban Meyer.
And it's not like the NFL. It's not like there's like 12 names. There's like 80 names. So yeah, it is difficult to keep track of. So sorry to put you on the spot there.
Yeah.
But we know
I know Urban and Nick Saban were on there. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
They're the headliners. And when you look at that Urban Meyer record, tough to deny that. Obviously, he's a slam dunk as well as Nick Saban. 187-32 sticks in my brain from looking at that this morning. That's just crazy. And of course, won the 2 national championships at Florida. How does Gator Nation feel about Urban Meyer these days?
It's probably been come back around a little bit, Mark, because of course the wins aren't there as they were under Urban Meyer. So a lot of people were like, "Hey, I miss those days," no matter what it looked like. But no, a lot of people think he deserves to be in the Ring of Honor that Florida, has there at the stadium. I think eventually he certainly will be placed in that. They've come. I think most have come around. Of course, you go back to what happened, and he had the heart problems and then takes a year off. And look, I know people will say, "Oh, it was planned for him to go to Ohio State." I mean, look, he had no way of forecasting what was going to happen with Terrell Pryor and Jim Tressel at the time. He had no idea that was going to play out. And he took a year off and was back and came back to the year of college. It came back to college football at Ohio State. But I know that rubs some people the wrong way. But all in all, I think enough time has passed for most of Gator Nation that there's still a soft spot for Urban Meyer and the 2 championships he was able to win at Florida.
Back to 2024, we are 6 weeks away from SEC Media Days. And then once we hit that, we roll right into August camp. Position battles. Of course, those are going to be waged in August. Starting with day one, where are your eyes and ears going most of all?
I think, Mark, we should probably I'd still call it a battle, but I think we kind of know how it will play out. Elijah Badger was the big transfer wide receiver Florida got from Arizona State at the tail end. It was just a couple of weeks ago. So big pickup for Florida, a big body receiver they really need to put on the outside there. Now, there is that little worry of a back injury that he suffered late last season, was very limited this spring as well. But Florida needed to go get a weapon like that to really help Trey Wilson. And look, Trey Wilson was going to put up numbers anyway, but now defenses just can't solely focus on him, solely focus on taking him away. A Badger can be a downfield threat, a run after the catch threat. So if he's downfield, that allows Trey Wilson to work underneath like we saw him do last year, but also just make it where defenses can't solely focus on him, double team him, bracket him. So they'll move him all over Billy Napier did say when he was here in Jacksonville a couple of weeks ago, about Trey Wilson, we're going to wear him out. So they're going to give him the ball a lot. One of the best playmakers as a freshman last year for this Gator offense and in the country as a freshman. And then Elijah Badger coming in, they're really going to help around that. But you also got Chimere Dike, transfer from Wisconsin, who played with Graham Mertz a couple of years ago, put up a pretty good season a couple of years ago with Graham Mertz in that 2022 season. So 2 transfers to go along with Trey Wilson, but we'll see what the wide receivers who are already building this roster hold. You got Khalil Jackson coming back. Marcus Burke is the name that for the last couple of springs has been, hey, this is going to be a breakout player. Once again, that's coming up. But then young guys, Andy Jean, Aiden Mizell, who was on this roster last year as well. So you're getting some transfers, I think, to bring in some proven production, but I still wouldn't overlook the guys that are building this roster. So I think wide receiver, Mark, is certainly the place I'm going. And then offensive tackle. Florida suffered some injuries. Austin Barber, who played left tackle last year, right tackle the route before for the Gators. And then Cam Waits, were the guy who's been experienced. Florida brings in transfers, Devin Manuel from Arkansas, Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon from San Diego State. Well, kind of fortunate for them. Barber and Waits went down with injuries in the spring. So it was those transfers who got rep after rep after rep in spring. And I think that's really going to benefit Florida and really create a competition at the tackle spots when fall camp rolls around. So even though, the offense hasn't had as many questions as the defensive side of the ball, I still think there might be a little more questions of how it's going to turn out. I think defensive line, we kind of know how that's going to turn out for Florida. Linebacker, I think we kind of know that's how it's going to turn out. Safety, Florida brought in a ton of transfers at that spot as well, but I think we know right now it's going to be Asa Turner, Jordan Castell, DJ Douglas as your top 3 at the safety spots. So a little bit of a battle there. But while this defense overall has more questions, it's not necessarily, Mark, who will be the contributors. It's just how much will those contributors have an impact for that defense.
So if we stay on the transfer topic here, you mentioned a ton of them. Who would be most likely to be standout guys? We're talking to a lot of people here that are just catching up with Florida football, but they've got a marquee game, of course, week 1 against Miami. Who would be the guys that we would need to look out for as guys that could be impact players?
Elijah Badger. I want you to talk more about him, but wide receiver, I'm going him just because of the reasons I mentioned earlier. Mark, on defense, I got to go Pup Howard. He was the linebacker Florida probably should have got a couple years ago anyway, but spent a year at South Carolina, hits the transfer portal after 1 year at South Carolina from Jacksonville. It really hurt me. I got to know him a little bit as a recruit, know some people close to him as well. So personally, it stung a bit to see him to go to South Carolina, but now he's in Gainesville anyway, and really should just step into a starting role right there alongside Shamar James. He got a ton of reps in spring because of some injuries, because of some transfers that away from Florida at that position, like Scooby Williams going to Texas A&M. So now I think Grayson Howard comes in right away and is an instant starter, impact player at the linebacker spot. I mentioned DJ Douglas at safety as well from Tulane. He was probably one of the more consistent players at the safety spot. Asa Turner brings a lot of experience from Washington and that defense that was in the national championship this past year. But also one kind of under the radar because of his name, but he was highly ranked in the transfer portal, Mark, was Joey Slackman, the defensive lineman from Penn. Really was a stat machine at that level. Now it's about, can it translate to the SEC? But he was one of the higher ranked defensive linemen, and Florida just needed more bodies there, but not just bodies, impactful bodies to go along with Caleb Banks, who played a good bit last year, Cam Jackson, who played a lot last year. Florida really added some depth through the transfer portal. Mark, I think Florida brought in, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, close to 15 transfers. And we were going through it on Gators Breakdown Plus the other day. We expect 13 of them to have impacts this year for Florida. Can Cormani McClain, the transfer from Colorado, can he come in, the 5-star, who in a lot of ways probably thought should have been a Gator to begin with as well, kind of like Grayson Howard a couple cycles ago. He comes in. Can he have an instant impact? Florida doesn't need him to have an instant impact this year, but if he can whittle his way and to get starting reps or get a whole lot of reps, he earned it, because he had to go out there and beat a Devin Moore for some reps. He had to go beat a Jason Marshall for some reps. So if he's out there making impact, he went out there and earned it. Florida really went heavy in the transfer portal, Mark, and most of those guys should be contributors, not guys that need to develop down the road.
Cormani McClain, there's no doubt about the talent, number one rated cornerback coming out of high school. There was a lot of drama surrounding his recruitment with Miami and others at the time. Then he goes out to Colorado. And Deion Sanders didn't have the best things to say about him. It was probably 2/3 of the way through the season. Deion was asked, okay, why is he not on the field, considering look at your defense and look at this talent? Basically said, late to meetings, doesn't show up for meetings, not prepared, doesn't know the defense. Just considering what's been whether it's been substantiated or not concerning Cormani McClain, any concerns that he's going to, run the straight and narrow and be able to show up and work and be the player that he should be able to be?
Well, Mark, it was a pretty low risk move for Florida. What the layout of this and how it played out was a complete understanding of what he needed, what he's looking for, and what Florida was looking for. Mark, he doesn't even have a scholarship for Florida right now. He got a preferred walk-on status. So it doesn't hurt Florida numbers-wise right now. Now, if he goes on to earn a scholarship, just fine. And I know people will sit here, well, he can mess the locker room up. We've seen that, and because of those reports. And it's just like, well, if it takes one player to mess your locker room culture up, Mark, was your locker room culture all that strong to begin with? So I think that's the way I was looking at it. I think it's a low risk move for Florida. If he turned out to be the 5-star player that he was rated, big move for Florida. But there was an understanding from both sides of what they were looking for. And then, certain parameters he has to meet to get on the field, to be a part of this team. So far, so good from what I've heard the last few weeks that he's been on campus. But of course, we know Summer's got to go, and he's got to be a part of this team in the season. But, if it doesn't work out, no harm, no foul for Florida, especially as far as numbers go.
For a 5-win football team, you would think that there would be opportunities for true freshmen to come in. And then also based on your intel of who's impressed early, who would be the possible freshman that could step in and do something?
Well, we'll go to defense, and I know I mentioned linebacker with Pup Howard, but Miles Graham did go through a little bit of spring practice before he suffered a back injury, had surgery. He should be on the field for fall camp, but one of the best linebackers in the country, Mark, certainly was getting the feels already of being an instant impact as a true freshman. Aaron Childs just come on campus as well, another top linebacker in the country. So Florida's got two linebackers at two freshman linebackers at that spot that I do think can have an impact. If you go back to the spring game, Jaden Ball was electric as a running back in the spring game, Mark. Big bodied, but doesn't move like it moves like he's much smaller than about the 230 he is, making guys miss, putting his foot in the ground, a little shimmy and getting upfield. And also Tank Hawkins at wide receiver, one of the fastest players on this Florida team at the receiver spot. I mentioned receiver earlier, but with his speed, may be able to find a way to get on the field. So about 4 of them out there, Mark, I'd probably come off with the top of my head that I think can make an impact this year for Florida.
David, of course, we know that this is, I don't think there's any question, it's the toughest schedule in the country, but we actually got some kickoff times and some networks announced here just in the last 3 or 4 days. So we're looking at, of course, that triple header on ABC that's going to be mammoth with Clemson, Georgia's the lead in, and then the Notre Dame, Texas A&M game on the other bookend. But Miami, of course, at the Swamp for a 3:30 Eastern on ABC. Samford, that's an ESPN Plus, SEC Network Plus game, week number 2. I know you love those cupcake games. You just think that there should just litter the schedule with those cupcake games. No, David is a ardent, let's play real college football type here. But Texas A&M, that one's slated for another 3:30 kickoff. That one back at the Swamp. So pretty imperative this team gets off to a good start with 3 consecutive home games. But again, that'll be a choice between ABC and ESPN as they determine that. So any thoughts about those time placements early in the schedule?
Hopefully y'all survive a 3:30 kickoff mark there in late August in the Swamp. It's going to be swampy, of course. So, that one, of course, a lot of people wanted that night game there, of course. But, get a 3:30 kickoff there. Both teams, of course, both squads certainly be ready for that the heat that will come with a 3:30 kickoff there in August. And Mark, I mean, what a big game, for both coaches coming into their third year. A lot of pressure on Billy Napier, a lot of pressure on Mario Cristobal, a lot of recruiting battles over the last few years between those guys. So certainly a big game. Both transfer quarterbacks, Cam Moore, his first year there, Graham Mertz, his second year at Florida. But just a lot of familiarity, of course, with the players, and two coaches really looking to get off to a good start in critical years for them. Big game to kick off the season there. And then Florida gets a little bit of a breather, as you said, night game at Sanford. And then Texas A&M comes, Mike Elko, and his first conference game, I believe, it will be at the Swamp, and Florida's first conference game as well. And you got Mississippi State after that. I mean, Mark, there's a 4-0 start here possible for Florida. Certainly there is. But also, there's probably a 2-2 start staring them in the face as well. Florida should beat Sanford. Florida, now don't get me wrong, have had trouble going on the road to Starkville in the past. And even with some better teams under Steve Spurrier and Ron Zook, and guys go there and lose games. We've seen it over the years. So, but with a first-year staff there, you'd expect Florida to go to Starkville and get a win there. So a 4-0 start, of course, with the back half of the schedule would be huge for Florida. Get off to a good start, get some kind of pressure off Billy Napier as well. Then you got a bye week in UCF, very, very tough schedule. Out of conference opponent there for Florida. If there is pressure on Billy Napier, one way to ramp that up, Mark, is to go lose to Gus Malzahn in Central Florida. Look, Florida's got to play all the teams, all the Power 4 teams in the state of Florida: Miami, Central Florida, and Florida State to close the season. So Florida, if they go undefeated there, 3-1, could kind of claim somewhat of a state championship or whatever. But that's going to go a long way in what the pressure is for Billy Napier. What do you do against those rivals in your state? And then, of course, the rest of the schedule there as well. Mark, that road trip to Tennessee, I think, is probably the most worrisome game in that first few games for me, or that first half of the Gator schedule. But can't overlook Kentucky. I mean, Florida's lost 3 straight against Kentucky as well. And then another bye week before they go to that gauntlet of Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State. I mean, Mark, those last 5 games, all 5 of those teams were fighting for conference championships, college football playoff spots toward the end of last year. Now Florida has to play all 5 of them in a row. So you hope, if you're for Florida's sake, look, it is a tough schedule. Some have said the toughest schedule ever. Maybe some teams don't live up to that expectation, but it will still be up to Florida to take advantage of those situations. But certainly a tough schedule. And Mark, I think the way I look at it is embrace it. I mean, to me, it's year 3. This is Billy Napier's roster. It's his team. He's built it in his image. If this thing is headed in the right direction, we should see improvement no matter what the schedule is.
And the other kickoff and network announced the Georgia game. That's either going to be an ABC or ESPN. So just to enlighten some folks out there, the deal is that they can set up the first couple of weeks of the season, and then some of the real marquee matchups, whether that's Ohio State, Michigan, they can lock in. But basically, it's a week and a half determination prior to that Saturday where the networks determine, okay, these are the best matchups. This is where we're going to put the ESPN game versus the ABC versus ESPN2 versus the SEC network and so forth. That happens on the Monday prior to the weekend before those particular matchups. So we will see those play out the rest of the season. Is there some kind of backstory about playing all 3 schools? So I love that as a college football fan, playing the 3 Florida schools. But my goodness, and not to defend or make an excuse for Florida football, but having always have to play Florida State. So let's understand that we got 4 teams that in the former SEC Eastern Division that have rivals in the ACC. Well, Florida's got the one that is the most consistently an elite program that they have to face each and every year. So they're going to catch back flack if they don't schedule somebody else. If they schedule 3 cream puffs and just rely on Florida State as being the game non-conference, people are going to criticize, oh, you're not scheduling anyone else. But how many teams go out there and schedule somebody else? And here we've got 2 others in Miami and UCF, and all in state. Is there any kind of backstory to scheduling kind of the state championship approach this year?
I don't think so, Mark. I think it was just Scott Strickland, for whatever reason, putting all these games in one year for Florida. Now, granted, a lot of these were settled before the SEC expanded, before Texas and Oklahoma came in, and the SEC scheduling got blown up. A lot of those were already in place there. But Mark, I was just noticing when you had that schedule up, I don't know where FBS schedules gets their rankings. They had some rankings beside those schools, but if I'm not mistaken, I saw the last 7 opponents there for Florida all had a number beside them. Now, I don't know if that was last year's rankings and it being based off of that, but no, it can't be because Georgia's number 1 there. But there's a 16 besides Tennessee. There's a 23 beside Kentucky, a 1 beside Georgia, a 4 beside Texas, 12 LSU, 6 Ole Miss, 15 Florida State. I'm assuming those are rankings from somewhere.
From somewhere, maybe an ESPN FPI or something.
But there you go. That just shows you how tough Florida's schedule is. I mean, their final 7 opponents, according to this ranking here, are all ranked. And the last 5 are all in the top 15. So,
and I'm going to clarify before I get a comment either in the chat or later to the comment section when somebody says, well, South Carolina's got to play Clemson every year. I understand Clemson's been better than Florida State for the most part in the last 10 years, but I'm just speaking historically. There's no comparison between those other schools that have to be played and Florida State every year for Florida. So,
hey, Mark, we've heard that too. You know, Florida playing Miami this year. And we've heard, well, why doesn't Florida play Miami every year? What school do you know in the SEC goes out and schedules 2 Power 5 permanent opponents? Now, playing Miami every now and then, sure, do it. But nobody goes out there and schedules 2 permanent Power 4 opponents. Nobody does it. So while Florida gets flack for not playing Miami every year and Florida State every year, I'll never get it when the schedule's already been tough enough anyway.
Nobody in the SEC does it. The only team I can think of is USC's got Notre Dame every year. Then they go out and grab somebody else, but they don't play in the SEC. Yeah.
But, and they don't want to play an SEC team this year according to reports.
Yes. They apparently wanted to get out of that one for sure. David Waters, Gators Breakdown. Man, it's always a good time and appreciate David stopping by, breaking things down on the Florida football front. And maybe Billy Napier's swan song, or maybe a resurgence in Gainesville that people aren't expecting. It should be intriguing one way or the other. And again, Gators Breakdown, it's right here on YouTube and your favorite audio platform. David, this was apropos you kicking us off for our SEC run here this summer. So we so much appreciate you stopping by, sir.
All right, Mark, let's do it again.
Yes, absolutely. David Waters, Gators Breakdown. He is the best, and this was a great way to start off our summer run of SEC live shows. And again, this is the intent, folks. Every Tuesday, noon Eastern. We may have to switch it up from time to time. I had to switch it from 11 to noon today, but basically every Tuesday we'll be here with the caveat. Listen to this. Once we get to SEC Media Days, we'll be here every day talking SEC football with you live. So that's going to be every day, starting with SEC Media Days, SEC Live Show, throughout the entire month of August, through the season into January, talking SEC football. All right, let's get to the phone lines. We got our buddy Ballard Sports Media stopping by. Christian, what's going on, sir? Oh, I can't hear you. Don't know if there's an issue with the mic on your end. I should be able to hear you since we just had David on the line, so I don't think it's on my end.
Is this better?
There we go. Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mark. Fun fact for everybody. I'm sure some people here, kind of watch my channel. We got Mark coming on the show. At least I hope Joey Foster talked to you about talking up some Big Ten.
It's booked.
Yes, sir.
I don't remember when, but it's on my calendar. It's sometime next week, right?
Yeah, I think I have you right here, probably for Thursday, but no, let me see. June 11th. I think that'll be a week from today.
I'll be there.
Yes, sir. So the question I had, and again, really good interview there, talking Florida football and SEC football, getting us kicked off today. But I've kind of noticed something, at least I think. But I know NIL can kind of play a factor. Players are fixing to get paid in college, and that's going to play a factor. But have you noticed a trend with recruiting, and obviously you want to go to schools today like Clemson and Georgia and all these championship type of schools. But is it me, or does it seem like recruits are drawn to a coach that's going to stick around, like a younger coach, like a Kirby Smart, like a Dabo Swinney? Um, and you take away, like, if you had to take away like how many championships or what they're doing in college, like, is age playing a factor in where these kids are going to school, you think?
I think age is playing a factor among college football coaches from the standpoint of the wear and tear and the pace and the lack of an off season. I think that's where it's taking a toll. And I think this is very much becoming more and more a young man's game than it is the days of Bobby Bowden and Joe Paterno coaching until they were almost 80 years old. I
Right.
just think that the pace of recruiting, transfer portal, and consider that in the transfer portal, you have to recruit obviously the players that you want to pursue across the nation. You got to watch film, you've got to cut up film, you've got to figure out who's really good. You can't just, it's easy for us to look at rankings and say, where did those rankings come from? Let's go grab Caleb Downs. He's the best safety in college football, and Ohio State. Those are the easy gets. But look at these transfer portal numbers. I look at them every day and go from team to team, and we're looking at teams that have signed between 15 and 25 players, and they've lost 15 to 25 players usually. And there's a lot of scouting involved in that. And of course, the head coach isn't doing that first and foremost, but it's delegated. And then he's got to look at these players. And then you've got official visits. And I'm just talking about the transfer portal. And then that whole recruiting process is taken to another level. Now we've got to recruit our own players to stay if we want them to stay. And if we don't want them to stay, there's so much more roster management to have those conversations with them, see if they want to leave, if they will leave. Yeah, forget it. Now, from the standpoint that you're attacking it, Christian, I think that it's less about age and it's more about where is this coach positioned? Meaning, we just got done talking with David Waters, Florida football, Billy Napier. Think about what a difficult position he's in trying to recruit. He's coming off 6-7 and 5-7, and he's facing the toughest schedule in the country by far. His team's not supposed to be very good with a very good record, and he looks like he's on a banana peel, and he's trying to recruit players to come play for him. So, of course, he's not an old man, but it's more about look at the situation I'm in, and his has to be the worst from a perception standpoint in the country. Are you going to be able to get players to come play for you if they don't think you're going to be around, not necessarily because of your age, but because of your situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even like it's only been, I guess we're coming up on 4 years since Alabama won the title in the COVID year. But I mean, even Nick Saban, like, you know, he's been struggling. Let's say, let's play hypothetical real quick. If Nick Saban did not retire back in, what was it, January? Like, would he still be recruiting guys right out of the gate today, or are guys going to like Georgia? And because I mean, think about this. Also, I mean, it was 2020 when they last won a title. So I mean, he's never really gone like 3 or 4 years without one in his tenure at Alabama. So like, and that's the reason guys go to places like Georgia and Alabama is to win national championships. Well, if they see that Nick Saban kind of took some years off a little bit, like, are they going to kind of shake their head at that and be like, I don't really know, or and then you look at today what we actually have going on with Kalen DeBoer. He's actually off to a hot start in recruiting.
Well, I will say Nick Saban, first and foremost, is a unique case. So we can't necessarily clump him in with everyone else. He is most likely the greatest of all time. So with him, yes, age was a factor. There's a different situation there. Age was a factor. And obviously, at some point, he was going to retire. And lo and behold, he's done that. But maybe the state of the game and the rules changes, I don't want to say forced him out, because he still was an eyelash from playing in the national championship game. So let's consider, yes, on the surface, if you're just looking at Nick Saban wins national championships, basically every other year at Alabama. Wow, he's gone since 2020. He's gone 3 consecutive years without a national championship. But seriously, 2021, they had a lead in the national championship game with what? Your recollection is going to be a little bit better than mine. The last 4 or 5 minutes of the game, they had a lead in the national championship game without his 2 best wide receivers at that point. They were that good. 2022, of course, they tripped up. And again, they were so close to being a national championship contender and finished off Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl. And then they come back this year. And again, they are a drive away. They're a play away, however you want to phrase it. All they needed was a 3rd down stop against Michigan, and they're playing in the national championship game. So I don't believe that Nick Saban had lost his fastball. I think that he just saw this as an opportune time to step away, and he was not in favor or a big fan of what he would have to go through to maintain a college football elite program.
Makes a lot of sense to me, I guess. He, like you said, he didn't lose his fastball. He wasn't losing it. He wasn't on like this big decline because, you mentioned that 33-18 Georgia game, right? If Bryce Young doesn't throw that pick six, maybe they go back down the field and maybe they could tie the game up or something. You have that scenario. The following year, they went, 11-2, won the Sugar Bowl. And,
They lost 2 games
they
on the last
still,
play of the game.
right, right. Tennessee and LSU. And I think that LSU game actually was overtime with with a 2-point conversion for, I think it was Mason Taylor that caught the ball from
Yep.
Daniels. But yeah, you like the saying age ain't nothing but a number. I think Nick Saban kind of proved that. Because I mean, in his 60s, he was winning what he win? 3 in that like time frame? He won because he would have turned 60 in and this is how much research I've done. Like I think 2011, 2012, and they won both of those. They won 2015, they won 2017. So in his 60s, dude, he won like 4 championships. I mean, you would think like it by the time a coach is 50 years old, he's at least thinking about hanging it up, but we don't. I mean, I don't know.
And every time he did not win a championship, he still had one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country.
Always.
There
And his
was no
recruiting's always off the
faltering in that
charts.
entire tenure. None.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting to talk about. Mark, thank you for having me on. I look forward to talking with you more next week, talking some Big Ten. And I love the show. Love all you guys. Y'all subscribe to this guy if you're not already.
Thank you, Ballard. Appreciate you. We will see you next week,
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yep.
That is one good guy right there. Christian Ballard loves his Alabama football, loves sports, loves his faith, and he's a great guy. All right. We so much appreciate Jackson stepping in here with a gifted Voice of College Football membership. So what you get there is first and foremost just the pride of being a member of the channel. First and foremost, of course. You get our Discord link and you can talk college football 24/7, 365. We're certainly, I don't want to say on the cusp of revamping the Discord, but we've certainly had conversations with a number of key players in trying to make that a better experience for you on the Discord. And then also you get basically it mirrors the Patreon membership, the YouTube membership, same thing. If you want to support us on both, that's phenomenal. If you don't, you're not missing anything on either one because we mirror your benefits and so forth. And so you get priority call-in line, you get the shout outs, you get the request that you can make of me of any kind of exclusive content production that you would like to see out of me as well, and a whole lot more here at the Voice of College Football. So Jackson, thank you so much for doing that. And lo and behold, there's the guy right there. Jackson.
How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you doing this for us here.
Oh, I always try to make sure I can do that every time as much as possible, especially on the first edition of the SEC Live Show.
So again, folks, we're going to be here every Tuesday. And then once we hit SEC Media Days, every day. Every day.
Oh, yeah.
I
Tell
almost
your
said every
friends.
damn day, but my God, My mother, God rest her soul, she would not approve of that, but sometimes I let a cuss word fly here and there. But yes, every damn day, SEC Live will rev it up starting on SEC Media Days.
I've let a few out in my time, but
It's all right. It's quite all right.
tell your friends, your family, your frenemies, and the cashiers at Publix about the SEC Live show. They will not want to miss it. That I can guarantee. They will get some of the best coverage on SEC football. And
Just had
come
a
on
great-
in. Let's get SEC football at the Voice College Football to 1,000 subs. It's now 398 subs away from 1,000. Let's get it there before the season.
I'm glad for the reminder too, Jackson, because we're simulcasting. We're on the main channel, the national channel. We're over on the SEC channel. At some point, we would like to move the entire operation for this show over to the SEC channel. But for right now, we want to make everyone aware. Hey, we've got an SEC channel, as Jackson so eloquently explained. So we've got our SEC channel, and so folks, so please subscribe over there. We just passed 600 subs. Jackson,
the
what's going on
meantime-
today?
It's going pretty good. I'm just thinking about Sam Pittman, how many wins he's going to need to save his job. And if he can't be able to keep his job, I wonder if Arkansas football can get that grand slam hire like they did in college basketball. That's going to be plaguing me for the rest of the summer.
Well, don't let it plague you, Jackson. But I think Sam Pittman basically, and we will certainly have our buddy Ty Hudson on here from Tusk Talk to break it down for us. And so he'll give us a little insight into what the hot seat looks like. But I think he is clearly on a hot seat. He can't go 4-8 again. I think that boots him out of town. I got to think it's a bowl game. It's a 6-6, and maybe he's got to win the bowl game and have a nice looking, at least above 500 record. And then I got to think that maybe recruiting ties into that too. If the recruiting is surging and doing well, then that's going to spell a better outcome than if they falter in recruiting, because as you well know, it has been a difficult climb for Arkansas football since they joined the SEC to recruit with everybody else in that conference.
And you most certainly cannot have a 7-6 game against Mississippi State. You certainly cannot have that. You have games like that this season, you're going to get chewed up like a chicken nugget.
Yeah, I don't forecast very good things for Arkansas football this year. Now, I've not done the deep dive into personnel, and we'll do our predictions throughout the summer. But I don't think it's a good situation right there now.
No.
The Boise State transfer quarterback is a decent player, but he's no game changer. Talon Green. I think KJ Jefferson's a better player. So, yeah, difficult for Arkansas to navigate the schedule that they're going to have to face this year.
Yeah, I'd hate to be going up against Ollie Gordon in week 2. He is a lot of trouble. You do not want to mess with him. I'd hate to be on his bad side.
OK State with a lot of experience coming back on offense, of course, at the 3 skilled positions led by Alan Bowman. And yes, Ollie Gordon, the leading rusher in college football.
Yeah, it was great seeing him last year against Oklahoma. Tell you the truth, I still get mad about Oklahoma State not being respected by ESPN or Fox, but that's another time for another day.
Well, what was the issue there with Oklahoma State not being respected?
Oklahoma not being on big noon kickoff where like Texas, Kansas State was on there instead. I'm like, come on. It's the last edition of the Bedlam. You don't know when that's going to be on for the next time.
Texas, Kansas State was a big noon kickoff? Was it?
Yep. Afraid so.
Okay. I don't recall.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a good game and all, but it's not a rivalry. But
who was the big noon kickoff the week of Texas, Oklahoma? Or, I'm sorry, Oklahoma State.
for Oklahoma State, Texas, Kansas State on November.
That was the selection on the same week. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, but I trust that the TV execs know what they're doing. But Bedlam was on ABC, correct?
Yes, at 2:30.
So I don't know how that rotation of selections work. Maybe they just I don't know what that was there.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious what they're thinking about with Georgia Kentucky on ABC 6:30. I guess they think Kentucky's going to get it done against Georgia. Somebody should really tell those executives that Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs are not going to lose to Kentucky. They should tell those executives that the last time Kentucky beat Georgia was in 2009.
Well, there's a lot of factors that go into that. So they're just looking for eyeballs, and they're just looking for TV ratings. And actually, some of these Kentucky-Georgia games, whether they be on CBS 2 years ago, or as you recall, ESPN last year, were not competitive games, at least not the game last year, and drew really good numbers. So that's, of course, Georgia. But Kentucky, surprisingly, draws pretty good numbers as well. So you put those two together. I don't know that they're necessarily looking at trying to predict scores of games as much as they are just looking at ratings.
I don't think that game's going to be very exciting for Saturday night because it's going to make people take a nap in the second half. But we'll wait and see what happens. Anything can happen in this crazy, crazy world of college football. But before I head off for the next caller, if you love top-notch predictions, insider knowledge, and watch parties, betting advice, come on into the Patreon membership of The Voice of College Football or become a YouTube member right here at Voice College Football. Now let's get it to 100,000 subs.
Thank you, Jackson. Glad you enjoyed the mug there. Thank you so much for all that you do, sir.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Jackson Johnson gifting a membership today. We appreciate Jackson and all that he does. He's all over social media helping us here at the Voice of College Football. All right, this is the SEC Live Show. We come your way each and every Tuesday until we get to SEC Media Days. And then guess what? Every day. Big Ten fans don't feel slighted. We've got a Big Ten show. And once Big Ten Media Days hits, every day for the Big Ten Live Show as well. Big Ten and the SEC. Sorry, Big 12. We love you. Regardless of what some people think, here at the Voice of College Football, they comment when I tell the truth about the Big 12 and have in recent weeks with a couple videos that people have taken exception to because I'm simply telling the truth, stating the facts, coming to reasonable conclusions. People don't like that, though. When it warrants it, we would love to do a Big 12 live show every day. We would love to do an ACC live show every day. There was, at one point, a time in which we did a Big 12 breakdown every week and an ACC breakdown every week and didn't have a Big 10 show every week. So we are an equal opportunity analysis team of college football here at the Voice of College Football. All right, while we wait for our next guest, of course, we've left the link there in the description section of the video. No, we didn't, but it is in the chat. So please join the show. Also, we are going to go to some news and notes. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to post the actual news and notes because I received these from a private source that I don't necessarily want to reveal, although all these news and notes are out there in the public. And certainly we are going to give credit to where credit is due and cite our sources for all of this. But let's run down some of the news and notes. I get these news and notes concerning SEC football each and every day. So this is going to help us out considerably in regards to tracking the conference on a daily basis. Many of the early notes are national polls. And of course, we talked about the College Football Hall of Fame. Please check out the video I posted this morning with headlines that detail the College Football Hall of Fame selections or the nominees at this point. And of course, the headliners are Nick Saban and Urban Meyer, two SEC stalwarts. And as we go through any other SEC notes, right now, the odds to win the national championship: Georgia 3-1, Ohio State 4-1, Texas 7-1. So two of the top three coming from the SEC. Oregon 8.5-1, Bama 13-1, Ole Miss is at 15-1, LSU at 17-1. We've got a note from Sooner Illustrated. Keep in mind, Oklahoma and Texas in the SEC, so this is about you as well. And we did an Oklahoma live show with Parker Thune of Rivals. Check it out. It's on the Oklahoma channel. That was on Monday. July 1st, Oklahoma will be a full-fledged member of the SEC, along with Texas, as the league expands to 16 teams, as the Sooners prepare to take on the challenges that await them in their new conference. The university and its athletics department are planning an SEC launch party on the OU campus to celebrate the program's next chapter. So this is on July 1st. There's an SEC launch party on the OU campus. The celebration includes a series of special free and public events, fans of all ages, 5K run, all of that business. Okay. We talked about some of the big game assignments that were announced this week, network and kickoff times. So to put a spotlight on the SEC, week 1, Arkansas at Oklahoma State, noon ABC. USF at Bama. Remember, Bama went to USF, trailed in the fourth quarter with Jalen Milroe on the bench. USF, the Bulls get the trip back to Tuscaloosa, 7 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN. Oklahoma hosts Houston. That's on the SEC network. That's an August 31st game as well. Actually, back up. That's an ESPN game for Houston, Oklahoma. Difficult to read this list. And so let's see if we've got any other news here concerning the SEC. We've got some of the major publications are out. I have yet to pick up an Athlon's or Lindy's, any of that yet. I will do so possibly today. We will have Phil Steele on sometime this summer. He's still wrapping up his interviews and his magazine, so we got to wait for that to clear, but we'll have Phil Steele on, which reminds me, this is not SEC related as we wait for Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. He's going to join us at 1 p.m. Eastern time. But Steve Deace, live, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on the main channel. Steve Deace live, 4 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. I believe I should double check that before I announce that. We just shared a few text messages, and I want to make sure we got that straight. Bingo. Wednesday, 4 Eastern, Steve Deace live, right here. Ferris Khan, is that not the truth? 71% of the earth is covered by water. The first time I remember hearing that cited, and we'll see if anybody remembers this name. The joke that I heard at the time, and this could be used in a number of angles, in a number of ways, was that the other third of the earth was covered by Gary Maddox. All right, here we go. Let's talk some Alabama football. We got Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama on the line with us. Stephen, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Mark. How you feeling?
I am feeling good. How are you feeling?
Doing good, man. We know it's the summertime. It's not much football going on, but we did have the SEC spring meetings. We know that summer workouts are coming fast for Alabama football. The remainder of the summer enrollees are here. Kagan DeBoer is excited. We have all of these preseason predictions and projections out, so we definitely know it's summertime.
All right, Stephen, I'm going to bring it to you fast and furious. Number one, we'll go recruiting. We know that camps are in play, a lot of big camps late May into June. A lot of commitments will be made 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks from now throughout the summer. Who are the big names that are in play for Alabama right now? Who's gaining much of the talk?
Well, right now, there are a lot of huge names in play, primarily at wide receiver in the defensive secondary. There's a couple of guys. The Dijon kid, he is one of the first kids out there, and when you watch his tape, reminds you a lot of Patrick Surtain. So he is out there, in these camps here. You have the Anthony Rogers kid at running back that a lot of people are looking at right now, and he is high on Alabama. Then you have you got this quarterback here that a lot of people are high on as well. I think his first name is Keon at quarterback that a lot of people are looking at. He's committed to SMU, but Alabama's got a bit of a lean there from him. The Tide is looking to get him on campus. And then you still have the Derek Smith kid, though he's already committed to Alabama, the wide receiver from Southside High School in Selma. He is still locked in to the Crimson Tide. So several offensive linemen, wide receivers, defensive backs that will have unlimited official visits. There's no more of a number being placed on these official visits now. They can take as many visits as they want to. They can be at these programs, in these camps, where these coaches can get their eyes on these kids and really, truly make these committable offers to them. So Kagan DeBoer, Courtney Morgan, who is the general manager for Alabama in terms of recruiting, all of these assistant coaches, they know once we get these kids who are on this campus, we can make as many committable offers as we can. And Alabama's doing its best to get a lot of these kids here on this campus, especially when you look at June and July here.
So, Stephen, I know that you eventually get to a lot of tape, but it's difficult at this time of year to get to everybody because we're talking a lot of names, and everybody you named is a top-notch recruit. But based on your intel, some of the people you talk to, and just the tape that you've watched, any particular guys that stand out to you, whether you just named them or guys that might be under the radar that you really like?
I like the Rogers kid at running back. I mean, speed, burst, power, explosiveness, cutback ability. I like him. The Dijon kid at cornerback, when you watch him play, there's a lot of Patrick Surtain there. The way he mirrors receivers, he closes on the football, he breaks up passes, he can tackle extremely well. Of a Derek Smith kid from Southside High School in Selma. When you watch this young man play, he can play receiver, he can play defensive back. The athleticism is there for that young man. So just those three have stood out. And even a guy like a Luke Metz, who recently committed to Alabama not too long ago at linebacker from Georgia, he can lay the wood. He can come up and tackle, can hit, can play in coverage. And this is the type of guy in Metz that Kane Womack wants in this 4-2-5 defensive system. So Alabama is going out there. They're getting more defensive kids to fit this 4-2-5, but they're also picking up these offensive guys that can fit into the mold of this Kagan DeBoer offense, which is explosiveness, which is motion, shifting, getting to your spot through on the field and just making plays.
Stephen M. Smith, Touchdown Alabama. In my own words, that's the show you need to catch each and every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6:30 Central. It's right here on YouTube, talking Alabama, talking the SEC. In my own words with Stephen, and talking again the Tide and the SEC. All right, Stephen, we are 4 or 5 weeks, something in that range from SEC Media Days. Once those conclude, it's right off to August camp. Position battles ensue from there. So set us up in regards to your most intriguing position battles.
I think the most intriguing ones are first and foremost, Mark is going to come at that right tackle position on the offensive line. Wilkin Formby right now has it, the former four-star in that 2023 class from Northridge High School here in Tuscaloosa. He's got it as of right now. Had an incredible spring. Wilkin he's got the terminology down. He's got his body right where it needs to be at. The strength is where it needs to be at. His footwork, his establishing of his base, neutralizing these edge rushers, his communication, it's all where it needs to be at. And though he has to fend off, you got Miles McVay in that room. You've got Nikhil Bertrand, for transfer from Texas A&M in that room. You got different guys in that room. But I think Wilkin Formby has truly began to separate himself, and he started doing that in spring practice. So I look at that right tackle position. That could be an interesting battle there. I look at wide receiver, and two guys can really shake up this room, Mark, and they're two freshmen, Caleb Odom and Ryan Hollywood-Williams. How do they fit in this room? Caleb Odom at 6'5", could be the first big body receiver to pan out since Julio Jones back in 2008. Alabama has had a lot of big body receivers that didn't pan out, whether it was Cam Sims, Derek Keefe, Raheem Falcons, Deron Carter. There were a lot of those names that whether they just didn't fit the system or injuries robbed them, it just did not work. Here is Caleb Odom, who comes in from Carrollton, Georgia as a tight end. He gets moved to wide receiver, had a phenomenal spring. Like, coach is salivating over this young man. But where does he fit? Does he fit at the X position at the top of the formation, where you're going to be asked to execute that route tree at a tremendous level? Or does he fit more at that Z position at the bottom, where he can just stretch the field, go out there and get the football? So that's going to be interesting there for Caleb Odom. Then when you look at Ryan Hollywood-Williams, a guy that's just an incredible talent, one of the most talented in-state players at that wide receiver position since Julio Jones in 2008. When you look at Ryan Williams, a two-time Mr. Football from Saraland High School in South Alabama, a guy that reclassified from 2025 to 2024 and never lost his rating, remained a five-star. The guy is big time. How does he fit into all of this? So those two can really shake up this room. That's going to be interesting when you watch the wide receiver position. And then for me, the defensive secondary. You got some position battles there. You know, one corner looks to be Damani Jackson, the transfer from USC. But the other corner, will it be Jaleel Hurley, one of the only holdover from the 2023 class in terms of scholarship defensive backs, or will it be the transfer from Wake Forest, Deshaun Jones, taking that spot there? You look at other spots in the secondary. Red Morgan, the true freshman from Central Phoenix City High School, who had a remarkable spring, just insanely athletic, incredibly gifted. He's battling for two spots here, whether at the Husky spot there in the secondary or possibly a free safety spot, battling there with the likes of Keon Saab. So the secondary is going to be fun to look at. The offensive line at right tackle is going to be fun to look at. The wide receiver room is going to be very fun to look at. Those three positions right there.
Stephen, I know you covered some of this ground looking at those positions in particular, but transfer players, who would most likely be the guys that will make an immediate impact out of the guys that were picked up in the transfer portal in the two cycles this offseason?
Got a couple here, Mark. The first and foremost, I think Damani Jackson makes a huge impact. A guy, we know what he is as a corner. He's got the length, 6'1", 190 pounds plus, modern-day high school in California. Started his career off at USC, though Alabama really wanted him, and he probably didn't get the teaching that he needed at SC. Now he comes to Tuscaloosa. He's around Kane Womack. He's around Coach Maurice Linguist and Colin Hitzler. So he's going to get that training, that coaching. He wants the tough, hard-nosed culture. He's about that. So having Damani Jackson here, I think he makes a big impact. I think Keon Saab, the transfer from Michigan, makes a huge impact. He's coming from a national championship team, Mark, where he contributed 28 tackles. We had about 5 to 7 pass breakups, 2 to 3 interceptions. He had an impact on that Michigan team. And with him coming in from New Jersey as a free safety, that's going to be huge there for Keon Saab. If I look at a guy and Jeremy Bernard, transfer from Washington as a wide receiver, he's going to have an impact in that room. He knows the system. He knows what is going to be expected from him with Jamarcus Shepard as the wide receivers coach. Bernard in the spring game, 3 catches for 122 yards. Not all receivers for Alabama or yards are concerned. So I like Bernard. And then last but not least, I go Parker Browsford at center because of the fact that he played in 15 games last year at Washington, 13 at center, helped that group win the Joe Moore Award for the top offensive line in the country. I know people say, well, he's only 275 pounds, can use some more weight, can use some more muscle, especially dealing with these tackles and defensive linemen in the SEC. And yes, more weight will be needed there for Parker Browsford, but he's got the athleticism. He can reach up to the second level, take on a linebacker. He can push and pull around and get up and down the field. Very good communicator. I like what Parker Browsford brings too.
Looking at this 2024 recruiting class, ranked number 2 or 3 in the country, depending on your service, how much do you credit and how impressive is it for you that Kalen DeBoer stepped in, was able to maintain this class? How much credit do you give DeBoer versus what Saban was able to put together before DeBoer took over?
You got to give DeBoer a ton of credit just due to a lot of kids now, they wanted to come to Alabama to be coached by Nick Saban. Not necessarily come because of the script A and the culture and the tradition and the pageantry of the program, but it had gotten to a point where, Mark, I just want to come to be coached by the GOAT, Nick Saban. I just wanted to come to be coached by him and to have him put me in the National Football League. And nothing wrong with that because of the pedigree that Nick Saban had built up throughout his tenure. But you got to give DeBoer credit because when Saban initially made his move to retire back on January 10th, a lot of guys left. Caleb Downs is like, hey, if Saban's not here, I'm out. Earl Little, he goes. Antonio Kite, he goes. Jake Pope, he goes. Isaiah Bond, he goes. So many names leave. And for Kalen DeBoer to sit there and say, hey, guys, I'm going to sell you on my vision. Don't jump ship. Believe in what I'm about to inject and instill into this program. And you kept a lot of your nucleus guys. You keep a Jalen Milroe. You keep a Tyler Booker. You keep a Jaden Roberts. You keep a Justice Haynes, a Jam Miller, a Richard Young. You keep a Kobe Prentice, a Kendrick Law, a Jalen Hale, a CJ Dupree. You keep a Deontay Lawson, a Jihad Campbell, a Malachi Moore, a Devontae Smith. You keep several guys on your defensive line. So that just speaks to those guys willing to get behind DeBoer and follow behind the vision. You're able to get a Ryan Williams to not just recommit, but to sign. And you keep quite a bit of this 2024 class to believe in what you are putting down to them in. We're going to put you in the best possible situations, not just to win a conference championship, but to pursue a national championship. DeBoer talked about it when he made his introductory press conference, Mark, back on January 13th. There was only one place he would have left Washington for, and that's the University of Alabama. So you got to give DeBoer a ton of credit for coming down here, maintaining the bulk of this 2024 class, but not just that, keeping the nucleus of the Alabama team together that Saban left behind.
Stephen, you covered a lot of this ground, but we want to certainly honor this super chat coming in from our guy, Jackson Johnson. Stephen, how do you feel about Kalen DeBoer so far? So you addressed the recruiting class. Obviously, they have yet to get punched in the mouth in the fall by any opponent. So that's when it really comes to fruition. But anything else, the way Kalen DeBoer has conducted himself that has leaned you in one direction?
I like him so far. And I like him so far because he is doing it his way. But most importantly, he has kept an open door policy to learn from Nick Saban. And he's talked about that a lot. Like, Saban has an open door policy. I want to pick his brain. I want to learn from him. I want to glean as much knowledge as I possibly can from him. But on top of that, he was down there at Miramar Beach, Florida for the SEC spring meetings. And DeBoer was addressed a question about, what about a one-loss team? Could you think they can get into this 12-team playoff, or a two-loss team? Can they get in? DeBoer said, look, we're not worried about that. We're trying to win every single game on the schedule, every single game on this agenda. We're taking every team for the significance that they have. We're not trying to focus on wiggle room. We're trying to get ourselves in that position where we're one of those teams that earns a first-round bye when you look at this college football playoff. So he's got the right mindset. He's got the coaching staff that's hungry to prove itself. And these players, they know it's been 3 years since Alabama has won a national championship, and they're hungry to get back there and finish the whole deal. So I'm really enjoying the motivation and the mindset that DeBoer has come in here with.
Non-Alabama fans, just soak up Steven's last comment about national championship droughts.
Been 3 years. 3 years right there. And
most even big schools, it's like, well, it's been 20 years. It's been 15 years. It's been 25. At Alabama, it's been 3 years. And consider in 2021.
It's been three, Mark, and it's driving the fan base absolutely nuts right now for some crazy reason. But DeBoer and this staff, they know the expectation. They know what's in front of them, and DeBoer wants to attack this, and he's excited about attacking this.
And to put it into further context, of course, that 2021 team was missing its two best wide receivers and still had a lead in the national championship game with 4 or 5 minutes left. And then the next year, they lost 2 one-point games. They kept them out of the playoff. And then, of course, this past year, they're playing an overtime game to get to the national championship game. So they are an eyelash away 3 consecutive years.
They were an eyelash away in 3 straight years. It's crazy to think about. College football, it's a game of inches. It's a game of inches. It's a game of eyelashes. It's a game of a couple of big plays that determine whether you win it all or whether you gotta wait the next year.
Hey, Steven, some of the matchups were announced in regards to kickoff times and networks this week for Bama. So what we have here is a week 1 game against Western Kentucky that's on ESPN in prime time. And then, of course, we know what happened with South Florida. That was a scare down there in Tampa last year. That game is a primetime ESPN affair. And then an interesting one for Bama that they experienced actually a couple of years ago against Texas when they were on the big noon kickoff on Fox, but this time against the Big Ten and Wisconsin at Camp Randall Stadium at 11 Central, local time there. So your thoughts about the early season schedule announcements?
Right now, I mean, you get 2 in Western Kentucky and South Florida that you can prepare for prior to going to Camp Randall Stadium in Madison, Wisconsin. I go back to that South Florida game. That was a scare. You got Byron Brown back at quarterback for South Florida, and he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in college football. I think he finished last year with over 30 total touchdowns and 11 picks. He finished with over 3,000 passing yards. You got that young man back, and he can play. But that week 3 matchup against Wisconsin, you're going up there to face Luke Fickell. Fox Big Noon has it. It's an 11 a.m. kickoff. The Badgers have a lot of talent, especially on defense coming back. That's going to be your first big road test in the Kalen DeBoer era. That was going to be fun.
And then, of course, after the bye week, that Georgia game has already been slated for a primetime affair. And when those two get together, the college football world shakes.
It does. And I mentioned this on my show in my own words, as you mentioned, Mark, that Georgia, Kirby Smart is looking at this situation as Saban's retired. Here is my chance to make Georgia the gold standard. Here is my chance. Here's my window to make Georgia the measuring stick and the program that everybody has to model after in college football. With Nick Saban saying, I'm hanging up my coaching shoes, Kirby Smart is looking at this going, how can I seize this window? How can I seize the moment? So that week 4 matchup coming off of a bye week, when Georgia travels to Tuscaloosa, everybody's eyeballs will be on that game. Can Kalen DeBoer get one over Kirby Smart? Can Kirby come to Tuscaloosa and get a big win? That's going to be a huge one.
And Stephen, before we let you go, we've got a question coming in here from Matthew Miller that says, where does Stephen think Bama finishes in the SEC this year? And I don't want to put you on the spot because maybe you haven't made your predictions, but who does he think competes year in and year out going forward in the SEC?
Well, I'll take the second one first. Who competes year in and year out? Of course, Alabama's going to compete year in and year out. Of course, Georgia's going to be right there. You look at Texas with Steve Sarkisian; they're going to be in there. I think if Missouri continues on this trajectory from last year, they have a question in there. I think Tennessee, if Nico Iamaleava, if Nico continues to grow and Josh Heupel pushes forward, Tennessee has a shot to be in there. So those are the programs I see competing year in and year out there in the SEC. Maybe Texas A&M, we'll see. Every time we put Texas A&M in that conversation, they don't seem to produce. So we'll see if Texas A&M can finally crack in there. In terms of where Bama finishes this year, I'm going to hold off on that one, have not quite made that prediction yet. I kind of want to see how do these guys look when fall camp comes in. So once August camp comes in and I'm out there and I'm seeing quite a few of these practices and how these different position groups look, but I will have my thought there, Matthew, on that first question.
Stephen, we so much appreciate you and you dropping by here to talk SEC football and talk Bama. You can catch Stephen in my own words Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6:30 Central Time, right here on YouTube. You're a click away from Stephen every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 6:30 Central. Stephen, it's always a pleasure. Great to have you, sir, as always.
Appreciate you, Mark. You take care, man.
And even though this comment by Matthew was not directed toward me, that's my show. I'll answer this one myself. I don't know that anything has given us any indication in the SEC or across college football of the haves and the have-nots changing. The only game changer in the SEC in the last couple of years has been that Nick Saban has stepped down at Alabama. We'll see if Kalen DeBoer, we know that he's good. We know that he's good at what he does. I think he's proven that both at Washington, Fresno State, his previous stops, FCS play. He's a really good coach. Greatest of all time. So there's a step down there to some degree, and with the more difficult schedules with Oklahoma and Texas. So the Alabama standard has to be put into some kind of context in rating Kalen DeBoer and what Alabama can do going forward. I don't think Nick Saban, if he was we were going to take 15 years off his life and turn him into Nick Saban at 55 years old and he shows up at Alabama, is he going to be able to duplicate what he did for the previous 15 years? So there has to be some context there. I think the biggest change in SEC football is at Texas. That Texas finally, we believe, based on, it's only one season, but based on one season, that if Texas is truly back, then Texas is the one difference in SEC football. Now, of course, Oklahoma historically is a better program than Texas, but that's historically. That doesn't mean right now, and they don't. I do believe Oklahoma has roughly a top 15 program in college football, and Texas more of a top 5 to 8 program in college football. So that is the obvious difference to SEC football, but it's more about Texas right now, in my eyes, than it is about Oklahoma. And for the rest of those programs, Stephen makes a point about Missouri, but I'm going to have to see it back-to-back years because I think this is more about Missouri just having good quarterback, running back, wide receiver play to put together with a really good front seven on defense is what they had last year. And it looks like they're going to maintain that for 2 years. Now, you might be off and running at Mizzou, but they're always going to be behind the 8 ball in recruiting out of high school. But high school recruiting, for as important as it is not 90% of the equation anymore. It's 60, 70% of the equation, ballpark. So maybe programs like Missouri, the transfer portal is going to aid them in bridging the gap that they have in trying to keep up with the likes of the deep South schools in the SEC and their recruiting advantage. Arkansas's had issues with that. Missouri's had issues with that. Those two, first and foremost, in recruiting, because they just don't have the players in state. And say what you will about national recruiting, players still generally stay close to home. All right, we appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. And again, this is our first edition, the SEC live show. We've got the Big Ten live show coming up on Friday, and we will be here every Tuesday to talk SEC football. See the quality guests we had today with Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama, David Waters, Gators Breakdown. We're going to do that every week. So expect the best in SEC football talk. And then once we get to SEC Media Days, every day here with you. So bring your family, bring your friends, bring your SEC football fans with you. And please subscribe to the SEC channel. The link is in the description section of all the videos, as is the Amazon link. Please, when you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide. We will see you in just about 4 hours. Iowa Hawkeyes live over on the Hawkeyes Network here at the Voice of College Football. So go to the Iowa channel, 5:30 Eastern. We will see you then. It's the biggest 12 tonight. It's the Michigan show tonight. It's the Nebraska show tonight. So we provide you with everything you need as a college football fan right here at the Voice of College Football. Plus, we've got a great conversation in store to be released here soon with Bill Bender of the Sporting News. That's going to be worth the watch as well. Right here at the Voice of College Football. See you in 4 hours.